Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, what is quickly becoming one of my favorite off-season episodes to put together. Bold predictions for this Nebraska football team heading into 2025. And I think the best part about this is listening to some of the bold takes that the Nebraska fans have in the comment section. We say this a lot. Look, if you are checking out this episode on a Monday afternoon in the middle of May, like chances are you got some hot takes you want to get off your chest as well. Please let it fly in the comment section. It's the best part about doing this episode. And to the Nebraska fans, the boys can't thank y'all enough, Dill. I think I speak for you. Ever since Matt Rhule has taken over this job, this program's been really fun to talk about. And you can tell they're taking the steps necessary to get where they want to go. They've had good off seasons. Now you got to put it together in 2025. Fired up to get into it. Let it fly in the comments section. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, without further ado, I'm going to start this one off with what I think is probably a pretty bold take, but I think it highlights the optimism I have around this Nebraska offense, and that is it's the most complete and multi-dimensional offense that you've seen Nebraska have under Matt Rhule. Where you go back to year one, it's just like the quarterback play didn't have a passing attack. And us Michigan fans, we know a little bit about that from our 2024 season. Then you go to 2024. Look, I thought the passing attack showed some life. I think the bigger struggles Nebraska had was the struggles they had to consistently run the football against some of the better teams in the Big Ten. Going into 2025, I think it's the most balanced offense that we've seen. 1,000-yard pass catcher, 1,000-yard rusher. Dill, I'll ask you the question. Let's start with the pass catcher here. Who do you think's going to be that guy for Nebraska in 2025?
Yeah, I think it's Dan Key. And I
Yeah,
look like you talk about completeness on offense, like just talking a pure complete receiver. Nebraska hasn't really had a guy like Dan Key. And Dan Key, I think, is slept on to an extent because people don't realize how bad the Kentucky
that's
quarterback
bad.
was for the bulk of his career. But he was, a really productive receiver. And I think the big thing is he can pretty much do everything an offensive coordinator would want. He's really good working with the ball in his hands. He can take the top off. He can work the mid range. Nebraska's had guys who are good with the ball in the air, like Jamal Banks, like maybe Isaiah Nair. They've had guys like Ja'Cory Barney and some of their slot receivers play pretty effective football. I don't think they've had that like true dominant number one guy yet who can work every part of the field and do kind of everything you want. Dane Key coming in with a quarterback who is by far more talented than anyone Nebraska's had going back.
I agree. And what I want to highlight here and why I'm going with Dane Key as well, what he does working vertically down the field, there's not many pass catchers who I think do it better. And like, what was the thing we were banging the table for with Dylan coming out of high school? Was what he can do pushing the football down the field, throwing the deep ball. I think he finally has that pass catcher where that can click going into 2025. Now, Ja'Cory Barney certainly has a chance to. And the thing why to buy stock in Ja'Cory Barney is what is Dana Holgerson's motto on offense? Like playmakers in space. Who is really good with the football in the space, and that can be that playmaker. It's Ja'Cory Barney. I think both of these pass catchers, and look, I don't mean to sleep on a guy like Nazea Hunter, who's a very complete wide receiver in his own right. But I think Dane Key and Ja'Cory Barney have very good shots at going over 1,000 yards in 2025. Now, here's the kicker. Who's going to be the 1,000-yard rusher?
Well, we all know it's going to be Emmett Johnson. It's going to be anyone. The question is, who's going to get to a catch?
So here's my take is if Emmett Johnson can handle the workload, he's going to get the workload. I think he's by far the best back on this football team. I thought he was the best back on this football team in 2024 as well. I'm not really sure why Dante Dowdle was getting the lion's share of the reps early in the season, but there's one thing we saw very clear. When Dana Holgerson took over this thing late in the season, Emmett Johnson was the guy Dana Holgerson wanted to work this offense around.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why. I mean, Satterfield liked to run the ball in like a phone booth for the most part. He really did keep that offense kind of constrained, if you will. I think they played more tight sets. When Dana Holgerson's on the field, you kind of know going back to his days under Mike Leach and kind of where he's learned how to scheme up and design offenses. It's getting guys away from the quarterback. It's playing a little bit more of a spread system. And that's where Emmett Johnson's really, really good. So it makes sense that I think Dana wanted to use him more. Probably the question is going to be, are you going to run the ball enough to me? I do look. is this going to be a really pass-heavy offense? Because, again,
No, I
that
don't think
probably is
so.
playing into the strengths.
And I don't think so. You even look at Dana Holgerson with Emmett Johnson in the back half of the season. He had 10 carries against USC, but he had 16 carries for $113 against Wisconsin, 18 carries for 71 yards against Iowa, 15 carries, 75 yards against BC. You saw Emmett Johnson start to get that workload, and I think that's only going to go up. I think he's one of your best players on offense. You got to let him touch the rock. Number
Well,
two.
they can use him out of both, like, running the ball and throwing the ball too,
Yeah,
and that's probably what really got him on the field with
yeah.
Dan Holgerson was his ability to catch, because that wasn't a thing the other Nebraska players could do, but it's a big part of what Dana wanted to do. It was an element of their game that they got something easy on offense, so I get he is gonna be the guy for Nebraska. I just wonder, are they gonna give him enough carries to hit that 1,000-yard mark?
Yeah, that's fair because Dana does like to use that wide receiver passing attack as kind of an extension of the run game. It's fair. All right. What if I change it to Emmett Johnson 1,000 all-purpose yards? Then I feel
Well, it's
freaking
gotta
great.
you gotta, like, be bold. You'd have to probably say 1,300 or something if you're gonna put in all purpose.
Fair enough. All right, number two. So we're doing a Nebraska Bowl prediction episode. You kind of had to include something about Dylan. I was playing around with like passing yards, and I just don't know if that matters all that much to Dana Holgerson or Matt Rhule. The thing I'm looking forward to the most is you're going to see Dylan take a step. And this is not just lip service. Like, one, you got a freshman quarterback that's going into year two. They're inherently going to get better at the sport. I don't think there's a question about that. Significantly better play caller and quarterback developer and better talent around him. Like, Dylan's going to take the step, and where I think you see that step get taken the most, being a little bit more polished with the football, not putting the football in harm's way as much. I probably could include like the fumbles as well that you saw from Dylan down the stretch. I think you're going to see a quarterback that takes care of the football better in 2025 because Dana Holgerson is going to give you a lot of easy stuff. And yes, he's going to ask Dylan to make some high level throws, but I think you're going to see Dylan probably press a little less in the 2025 year. And I think that's going to result in Dylan taking care of the football better than he did as a freshman in 2024.
And I think you're right, because they're gonna ask a lot of Dylan Rhule. I don't think that's gonna change. Like, they're still gonna ask him to make big time throws. I think when you say, like, just being able to get something easy at times, that was something that kind of changed when Dana
Yeah.
Holgerson took over, where everything felt hard. Like, Jamal Banks would have to make a really good play.
Yeah.
Dylan Rhule would have to make a really good throw to make things happen. You did start to see, especially with some things they could get to, like the running back wheel play just worked a lot for Nebraska. It was pretty effective. You kind of had something that was going to work relatively dependably. I think the big thing probably is also, yeah, just a much better pass catching unit, and that just makes things inherently easier on your quarterback. But I think everything kind of is coming together where, yes, you're going to just get natural progression from Dylan, but it's also an offense under Dana Holgerson that you feel a ton more confident about.
Yeah. I think like the stat line that I think would be really, he threw for what, 2,800 yards last year, like 3,200 yards, 20 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. Like, you get that from Dylan. Nebraska's going to win a lot of football games in 2025 with those numbers. Going to the defensive side of the football, something I know you're going to get behind. Vincent Shavers leading this team in tackles. I think he could get to maybe 100 or at least sniff that number. All this kid does. And look, am I putting a lot of stock in what I saw in that bowl game against Boston College? Yeah, 100% I am. But this kid, he's got South Florida speed, right? Coming from Miami. All he does is fly around the football field and find the ball carrier. And he's got way better range than a lot of Nebraska linebackers have had in the past. Like, this is not a shot at John Bullock, who's played some really good football for Nebraska. At times, teams could attack the speed of Nebraska's linebackers. You can't do that anymore. With a guy like Vincent Shavers at that second level, give me Vincent Shavers comfortably leading Nebraska in
My
tackles.
only pushback, not bold enough. My thinking was for Vinny Shavers. You know, I'm a big Vincent Shavers guy.
Yes.
You know, going back to the spring game last year when we got to see him on the
Yeah.
field,
Yeah.
I was a big Vincent Shavers guy. I think you got to have something like, is he going to be first or second team all Big Ten? I think that's
Oof.
got to be the goal for him. I think he's got to
Yeah.
push for that, because you look, they're losing a lot of really good players on that defensive line. They're going
Yeah.
to need some high impact plays from that linebacker room, which I think has the chance to be really good. And with that, Vincent Shavers, like that type of play he made in the Boston College game, like the strip sack, That's got to be a part of his game. He's got to make a handful of those. Give me him going for first or second team all Big Ten because I think that's the level he needs to play at if this is going to be a really good Nebraska defense.
Lot of good linebackers in the Big Ten, but I'm kind of with you. Like Vincent Shavers has that kind of ceiling that should fire a lot of Nebraska fans up. Last one for me on defense, and I got one overall team bold prediction. And I go to Sam McCough leading this team in sacks. Still back at the jack linebacker spot. This is where this kid was born to play. Go back to his film as a freshman at Indiana. This kid rips off the edge. Then he transfers to Oklahoma. Yes, he battles some injuries, but Oklahoma just talk about not using a player in the right way, like stick him in that nickel. That is just that ain't Deshaun McCullough. His best skill set, I think, is what he can do, burst and bend around tackles and winning off the edge. He's a guy that can drop in space, give you off-ball linebacker potential as well. They're going to use him off the edge. And look, you're trying to replace the pass rush production that you got from a guy like Ty Robinson last year, a guy like Prince Will Hugh. Deshaun McCullough and Willis McGahee, I think, are guys that Nebraska looks to in the 2025.
I think that's gonna be a battle. I think they're gonna be battling for that sack crown. I think my gut instinct is telling me Willis McGahee because of how he's been coming on. I think just like with the system, I think he's kind of the guy.
Look, it doesn't even matter. Like if you're a Nebraska fan, it don't matter. Like you're gonna rotate these guys a lot. If they're both around 6-7 sacks, like you're in a good spot for this Nebraska defense. But those two players are, you said Vincent Shavers, one of the more important players for this Nebraska defense. Those two are as well, because you're looking to replace that pass rush production that you got from guys like Ty last year. Last take that I have, Nebraska entering the month of November with only one loss. Dill, it's a gettable schedule early for Nebraska. Now it gets harder in the month of November. You got to go on the road to Penn State. I believe you play UCLA on November 1st, but look at this first 2 months. Like you open up with Cincinnati. I believe you're a 6.5 point favorite, neutral site, Arrowhead Stadium. Akron's a win. HCU's a win. Michigan without Sharon Moore. You got a true freshman quarterback going on the road to Lincoln, Nebraska. Dill, we've been to Lincoln, Nebraska to watch a Michigan football game. We know the environment Bryce Underwood's walking into. Look, I think Michigan's probably a slight favorite in that football game. But if you're Nebraska, you like the optics of playing Michigan early with the true freshman quarterback. Look at the month of October. Like, Dill, I think Matt Rhule's in a spot where I expect him to only have one loss going into the month of November. You got Michigan State at home, should be a win. You could play Maryland on the moon, should be a win. You go on the road to Minnesota, and I'll say this, Dill, that's the game where I'm going to get a sense of like where Nebraska is. Nebraska's got the better roster than Minnesota. They do. I think it's pretty clear. PJ Fleck has a very, very strong program there. They don't lose a lot of games they're not supposed to lose. If Nebraska can go on the road, beat Minnesota, you probably beat Northwestern at home, you're looking at a one-loss football team going into the month of November. Now it gets harder, but I think this is certainly a possibility for this football team.
Yeah, and that to me, I almost feel like that you being a little too conservative almost because like you said it. I mean, if they lose any of those other games, like you start to have some real questions about what this team is because this should be a big year for Nebraska. I think it's a big year. Matt Rhule, I mean, he's kind of I don't want to say he's used the year 3 thing as a bit of a crutch, but I think he did use it as a bit of a crutch last year. Last year I thought was kind of a disappointing year. They lost
that's fair.
I feel like they shouldn't have lost. And I think you're still kind of relying on that year 3 bump that he's been reliably having in his career. Now he's got to make it happen. Because again, I think last year it didn't do enough to silence maybe the questions around what he can be. And
I think that's fair.
Nebraska team too.
Yeah, this is the year. This is the year where you're supposed to be beating teams like Maryland and Minnesota,
like pounding them.
Michigan
like
State.
You shouldn't be in tight games with.
And this is the year. This is the year in the Expo. Sorry to interrupt you, but like this is the year where you want to have cracks at beating a team like Michigan that's coming on the road to play you with a true freshman quarterback. I think it's a really good chance that's what excites me the most if I'm a Nebraska fan is can you capitalize on this, or because they didn't really totally do that last year. They had an opportunity last year with an early schedule that I thought was gettable, didn't totally capitalize on it. Can you do it this year? And can you get, because I think me and you both, having watched this Nebraska team for a very long time, they're just looking for a little momentum and a little confidence on the football field. You have the opportunity to get it early in 2025 with the roster to do some real damage. Go out and capitalize. We'll pause it there. One more take on the schedule, Dill. You don't play Ohio State, you don't play Oregon, you get Michigan at home, and you don't play Illinois. Like some of the best teams in the Big Ten, Nebraska is missing. I think this is a big year to put together some wins. All right, now we're done. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.